Keanu Reeves occupied a first-class position. A single line, adorned in plainness, sharply contrasted with. Amidst opulent surroundings, a man observed him intently. His contempt was palpable, unable to be masked. Hubris, the subsequent events would prove. All individuals aboard that aircraft entirely, lost for words and destined to alter a life irrevocably. Before we proceed with this narrative, permit me to be mindful of your vantage point if you love narratives like this. Become a subscriber. Route as we're scheduled for another one tomorrow. A unique tale awaits you, set in the City of Angels. The renowned actor, Keanu. The airport thrummed with its usual frenetic activity. Interactions weaving in and out, merging seamlessly. Joined as one, with rolling suitcases in every direction. Amidst the chaos, a man's guidance emerged. Remained composedly in the queue for first-class service. That individual was Keanu Reeves. His attire consisted of just a checkered shirt and faded denim. His worn boots were accompanied by a backpack that bore the marks of many journeys. He lacked any ostentatious qualities. And it may be due to this fact, then proceeded, though often overlooked, any individual who paid closer attention. The look conveyed a feeling of jadadal, biyang de shrew. Regarding him, it wasn't merely his demeanor. Clothed, yet an aura of tranquility enveloped him. Appeared to be the type of person who wouldn't allow the turmoil surrounding him disrupted his tranquility. In contrast, everyone else seemed hurried in. Restless Keanu remained composed in his stillness. Took in all that surrounded him, as though, fully immersed in the present, he was unbothered by peaks or the severe juxtaposition of. He, along with the other travelers, following closely behind him in the queue, stood Victor. Victor Harding embodied a stark contrast. For the occasion, Keanu donned a costly tailored suit. Victor Harding, a prominent figure. Well-maintained footwear and a distinctive fragrance that required focus with every action. He appeared practiced, as if he longed for global recognition of his significance. His gaze darted swiftly across the line arrived, and upon reaching Keanu, he couldn't resist expressing his thoughts immediately. "Well, Victor," he responded, a hint of sarcasm in his voice. You never know what joyous smile could bring to whom. Nowadays, Keanu shifted his gaze and gazed at him, maintaining a steady countenance. Indeed, the world is brimming with unexpected twists and turns. Victor's expression darkened, a moment of contemplation passing over his face as he appeared to anticipate a more substantial response, a phenomenon that would validate his belief regarding the individual standing before him. However, was met with unwavering resolve from Keanu, unremarkably subdued, as though the remark held no significance. Victor resolved to continue his exploration. "It's not meant to be taken personally, but I get the impression that you're—" He described the kind of individual who travels in this manner. A soft chuckle escaped. It's uncommon to witness an individual exhibiting a relaxed demeanor within the confines of first class. The time to embark had finally come, initiating the first. The line of individuals started to advance. Keanu and Victor, communicating solely through unspoken gestures, additional words accompanied by their corresponding identifiers. Victor, as was his custom, strode forward with a steady gait. Assured steps as Keanu appeared, unaware of the hubbub surrounding him, moving with a consistent, tranquil stride. Previously upon their arrival during a routine flight, the unforeseen occurred. Upon arriving at his designated spot, Victor inspected He procured another ticket, and when he glanced upwards, he beheld, embarking. Keanu gracefully lowered himself into the adjacent seat. "Are you serious right now?" Victor mumbled, a disapproving shake of his head accompanying his words. In a state of shock, he lowered himself beside Keanu. emitted a soft, throaty laugh as though the circumstances were ludicrous, especially considering the location. Perhaps this was the only suitable location, Keanu merely stated. Gazed at him with an unwavering serenity, bearing and offered a subtle grin, as if we were on a journey side by side. And then he responded. With a courteous air, Victor folded his arms. To mask his unease, it wasn't solely a matter of his proximity to Keanu. However, contemplated the idea that the individual he had previously assessed was now disseminating. He was confined to the same restricted area as him, leaving him unable to. It's difficult to pinpoint the exact reason, but Keanu's involvement left him deeply disturbed in a manner he couldn't comprehend. Disregard the travelers in economy seating. Having completed the boarding process, Victor then opted to initiate a dialogue, but refrained from doing so in a courteous manner. Then what is your profession? During his time alive, he inquired with a relaxed and informal manner. An individual who previously believed they possessed knowledge of the solution nevertheless desired. Reassurance came from Keanu as he was making fine-tuning adjustments to his backpack was situated beneath the seat ahead. Gazed upward and replied succinctly, I'm employed in. In the film, Victor's expression shifted, his eyebrows arching in a gesture of astonished. I realize commercials are quite modest in scale. Kino offered a subtle grin, and he gave a dismissive shake of his head along those lines. Victor chuckled, admitting, it's always been something It's fascinating to observe people's pursuits in discovering there. A familiar location, yet occasionally specific. Not everyone is suited for life in a confined space. For example, consider the level of quality akin to first-class travel, such as with Keanu. Gazed at him, weighing him up for a brief spell. Circumstance. Yet he stayed composed, in my opinion. Each of us has a designated spot, Keanu responded. At times, our current situation is precisely where we need to be. Victor chuckled softly, a sound that was pleasing to the ear, somewhat thought-provoking, yet grounded in reality. Wasn't it straightforward? Keanu remained silent. Right away, he promptly reversed his course and closed the window, signaling the end of the discussion. However, Victor's work wasn't finished, as you're aware. Victor inclined his body slightly, speaking in a more intimate tone. Perhaps you find yourself in this very spot. Yet, certain experiences and locations are beyond the reach of monetary acquisition, aren't truly the property of any specific individuals. On this occasion, Keanu remained silent. He merely gazed at him for an instant, her face reflecting a blend of perseverance and unwavering resolve was required. A gaze that conveyed volumes without a word. Victor, upon grasping the full weight of his words, felt a surge of realization. The instigation failed to achieve its intended outcome. Effect settled back into his chair with a contented grin spread across his face, believing he possessed the dominant position in the circumstances. However, the reality was that circumstances were barely at a starting point. Initially, Victor held the firm belief that he was situated within regulation, yet Keanu's composure concealed an outcome he hadn't anticipated with complete precision. Each fleeting moment that appeared to be just an ordinary. The discussion was evolving into a new direction, significantly larger, considering the plane is already present. The illumination service commenced with the air. The flight attendant traversed the first-class cabin, a class featuring beverage service and Victor's presence. Guaranteed to attract attention, a glass of champagne. Please, he uttered, a self-assured grin spreading across his face. An element of unique distinction concerning this position. The cabin crew member, used to discerning travelers, acknowledged with a practiced grin appeared as Keanu's moment arrived. He then asked for something basic, nothing more than water. Victor was certainly not absent from the chance to weigh in. He glanced Keanu, exuding an aura of self-assuredness once more, and let out a soft laugh, then inquired about the water, barely containing a chuckle. Don't even try to say you're allowing the experience of flight to be unutilized. With a glass of water in hand, Keanu commenced his first class. The flight attendant presented him with a bottle and responded in a composed manner, stating that this was acceptable to them. At times, the essence of elegance lies in its simplicity. Victor squinted as though attempting to figure out the solution, but acted swiftly. To resist? Yeah, I see that makes sense. Not everyone strives for the utmost, enters the world with a natural inclination towards experiencing life's greatest pleasures. Keanu extended the bottle, then lifted it to his lips, and minor draft, unresponsive. Shortly thereafter, the remaining travelers commenced to take note of the challenging nature of Victor's words, but as Keanu seemed unfazed, the onlookers remained unaffected. Perhaps the most effective approach is a departure from the usual. Finally, Keanu declared, speaking to all. Victor maintained his usual serenity. Similar to the response he provided, he inhaled deeply, endeavoring to retain dominance over the discussion or perhaps individuals who vocalize that were perpetually denied access to. Certain matters hold profound significance, transcending others in importance. The influence of individuals within your circle is undeniable. Cabin crew member attending to a different passenger. The traveler surreptitiously peeked in. They pondered their course of action. Entering the scene, she observed Keanu's presence. Effectively managing the circumstances, he remained utterly silent, offering no reply beyond. A subtle grin reappeared as he glanced back outward. Conversely, Victor's window appeared discontent and desired to initiate a greater degree of, but was starting to understand that Keanu presented challenges. Victor Rattle's adversary held steadfast in their opposition. He held the upper hand in the disagreement, yet his demeanor toward those traveling with him reeked of conceit. Steadily progressing, uneasy feelings persisted, though Keanu exuded tranquility. Victor stood on the precipice of a truth he was about to confront. Could a shift in Ely's circumstances alter his perspectives on? Upon concluding her task, the flight attendant went back to the passengers. The area of the cabin designated for Keanu and Victor found themselves positioned while she presented another. Victor initiated a round of beverages. Transformation prolonged the dialogue, or more precisely his sequence of challenges you encounter. Life's essence is revealed. Traveling in first class, he commenced with expressive hand movements. Through his bubbly toast, your diligence shines. Secure your position and then savor the experience. However, certain individuals perceive it as though their presence is purely a matter of chance. Keanu set his water container down on the tabletop and then pivoted to face. Victor's eyes held a serene composure, yet within them lurked. There's a noticeable shift in it now, like a change in was prepared to offer a more immediate reaction to fortune. Regardless of our efforts, we all ultimately reach the same destination. Upon arrival of the flight, shouldn't we? Keanu conveyed his message with a calm, yet resolute demeanor. Individuals in their vicinity who had been quietly monitoring started to scrutinize the cabin more carefully. Had an almost eerie stillness to it, a couple of shared looks, observing each other's awareness. A delicate dissonance between the two Victors grinned visibly, though attempting to conceal the fact that the reply had struck him profoundly, in a manner he couldn't quite articulate. I wouldn't go so far as to claim that certain individuals are merely, at a more fundamental level, it's not universally applicable to all. Recognizes the significance of this presence. Keanu shifted his weight, inclining forward ever so slightly. Perhaps the significance of this presence lies in the embrace of his arms. He indicated the surrounding area, emphasizing that the seat itself wasn't the focal point. He indicated, "Your possessions and your conduct towards them." For some, the words lingered, suspended as if by an invisible thread. An irrefutable fact acknowledged by many travelers gave a small affirmative inclination as others conferred. Victor received approving looks from across the way. His hand appeared uneasy, so he attempted to dismiss it as mere nerves, but his anxiety was beginning to demonstrate its effectiveness is a promising start. Personal growth, ideology, perhaps you might want to explore providing encouragement. He spoke, striving to maintain a neutral voice. Cynically, Keanu offered only a brief response, grinned, and then pivoted to face the direction they were headed, concluding the discussion without verbal closure. His composure grew even more pronounced. Actions convey a message more powerfully than any verbal expression. Those in the vicinity started to respond. In hushed tones, a few murmured amongst themselves, as others focused their attention on Victor. Negative sentiments expressed by a pair, positioned a couple of seats back from an individual who, Keanu's acknowledgement went unvoiced, honoring his need for seclusion while simultaneously acknowledging his skillful management of. At the same time, Victor's circumstances started to. He became aware of being observed, and it wasn't a optimistic stance. His bearing, formerly assured, started to move subtly nonetheless, but he stubbornly refused to acknowledge his defeat. Victor believed his dominance was prevailing. The disagreement, however, the responses surrounding him, shared a contrasting narrative, one that remained untold. Understood the impending arrival of what followed, challenged his fundamental convictions regarding positions of influence, and, with deference as the flight attendant moved by, through the gathering of discarded glasses, Victor was clearly resolved to emerge victorious from the debate. His journey began. You wouldn't believe where this began, Victor. It's actually quite amusing. Persisting individuals devoid of any demonstrate consistently emphasize qualities such as modesty and unpretentiousness persistently. I observed Keanu shifting his weight and inclining closer. With a glance barely meeting Victor's gaze, I've observed that on occasion, individuals who they frequently discuss their possessions the most, those who experience the deepest sense of void within. The utterance lingered in the atmosphere for a short while. Time ticked by, and Victor appeared to be lost in thought for a fleeting moment. Speechless, he was at a loss for words. He attempted to speak, but found himself unable to craft the appropriate phrases promptly. Those in proximity to one another shared knowing looks. Several were clearly awestruck by Keanu's demeanor. Managed the, "I'm not intending to cause any offense." Victor, after a pause, spoke gruffly, his voice laced with the remnants of his recovery. In a world driven by competition, failing to demonstrate your abilities, and they will remain uninterested. That's simply the nature of the way things operate, Keanu settled back in his chair and responded, potentially with a sense of tranquility, yet I believe genuine success doesn't require loud proclamation. Represents. Keanu's spoken words held a weight of their own. A pervasive heaviness within the aircraft's interior. A couple of travelers subtly inclined their heads in agreement as several individuals glared at Victor with disapproval, who was evidently unaccustomed to the experience of faced with this kind of difficulty by this stage. The ambience of first class had undergone a transformation. A significant number of travelers were now completely engrossed within the dialogue shared by Keanu and an elderly gentleman positioned close by, named Victor, shifted their gaze to examine the trembling more intently. He shook his head, seemingly conveying his disagreement with Victor's actions. Victor, having cognizance of a palpable change had settled over the air. Steps made a futile attempt to conceal his annoyance, but rather than conceding, he unleashed another swift, low-cost strike. While philosophy may appear appealing, the reality is that life doesn't operate according to those principles. Continue to gaze at him, his expression unchanged, serene countenance. The genuine world is created by individuals named Victor, and ultimately, the final outcome. The way we interact with others is a reflection of our own character. Above all else, Victor was clearly distressed by the reply. He swiftly surveyed his surroundings, noting that the passenger's focus had shifted elsewhere. His popularity sparked hushed speculation among. They, in contrast, looked away as onlookers gazed fixedly. Directed at him, their faces displayed a spectrum of intrigue regarding. Discontent was starting to grow within Victor. Understand that his plan for control. He believed he possessed the solution, despite the fact that it wasn't functioning. Leading position, however, the influence of Keanu's language was reshaping how people viewed the travelers, and maybe even himself. The atmosphere inside the cabin crackled with an undeniable sense of unease. Victor folded his arms, attempting to conceal the unease arose from Keanu's statements. However, his annoyance was becoming increasingly apparent. But Keanu, on the other hand, appeared unfazed by he immediately addressed Victor, shifting his focus from the surrounding atmosphere, and gently dispelled the quiet with a composed voice. Victor, I get where you're coming from, describing the global landscape as intensely driven by rivalry. However, my experiences have taught me that on occasion the necessity, demonstrating something to others originates from a more profound unease, a hidden lack of confidence, a secret vulnerability. Victor's expression twisted in thought, uncertainty clouding his features. Is this an instigation or a sincere effort at dialogue, genuine interaction interior? He chuckled, admitting, honestly, I'm not sure. The origin of that notion escapes me, though. Keanu's expression shifted into a subtle smirk, hinting at disagreement. And he gave a doubtful shake of his head, though I've encountered numerous individuals who believed that success encompassed everything. Regarding the hidden perceptions of others, their desire was simply to experience a sensation of some kind. Absent within, the utterance struck Victor with force. Abruptly, he ceased speaking, leaving a fleeting instant preoccupied with the wedding ring on. His hand moved almost unconsciously, but promptly resumed his defensive posture. That's not reflective of who I am. All my accomplishments are. Put in a lot of effort, and I'm self-sufficient. You're dictating my life choices. Keanu kept composure, as though deliberating intently. He then watched Victor intently, awaiting his next utterance. A couple of seconds prior to resuming, I'm not. Claiming you put in minimal effort simply doesn't compute with me. Occasionally, we become so engrossed in the concept of displaying our accomplishments, what defines our identity. We become so focused on external success that we neglect introspection. What defines us when stripped of everything, Victor? His lips tightened noticeably. The question felt distinctly awkward. The thought lingered, yet he wasn't prepared for it. Acknowledge that it resonated deeply. The question lingers, who are we? He responded with a derisive chuckle. Our creations lack substance wit. How'd its presence? Keanu maintained his stare, his countenance shifting to, on a more significant level, I have to dissent. My view is that, characterized by our actions towards others rather than by what we gather, and ultimately the significance of our outward displays is diminishing. More than our internal burdens, he gestured towards. His utterances echoed through him, a physical manifestation of his feelings. Within the confines of the cabin, several passengers gave a slight inclination of her head as Victor seemed to face his difficulty in preserving his. That's a simple statement for someone in your position. Victor nearly stood up from where he was sitting. You possess no understanding of who I am. I'm unsure of the trials I've endured to arrive at this point. Here, Kino gave a resolute yet measured reply. Speaking louder, he agreed. You're absolutely correct. I'm aware of the narrative, but I don't feel it's essential for me. To recognize it, to observe that occasionally when an individual experiences a compulsion to vocally proclaim, their success stems from their attempts at concealment suggest a hidden anxiety, lack of confidence, isolation. The declaration struck with the force of a. Victor's visage was rigid, his cheeks burning with shame. Fury, and maybe humiliation, welled up inside him, causing him to clench his hands, noticeably battling to keep hold of. His hands balled into tight knots. Victor's composure finally shattered, unleashing a torrent of calmness rose suddenly, jarring him. Spent champagne flute, a descent to the ground awaits you. You consider yourself superior, he yelled, grabbing the focus of all those present. That small cabin, standing patiently, brimming with your ingenuity. Minor expressions conveying an air of expertise, all of life's intricacies, yet you remain unaware. The essence of residing in. In actuality, the travelers plummeted. Stunned into silence by Victor's sudden eruption, the flight attendant swiftly moved towards. Making an effort to de-escalate the situation, Keanu kept his composure, his gaze fixed steadily on Victor. He patiently awaited the conclusion of the man's speech. Prior to providing a reply, I'm uncertain if I'm. He asserted his superiority, stating, I'm more capable than you, with a voice that conveyed. Remained steadfast yet compassionate. I simply believe that, on occasion, reflection is essential. Concerning the essence of things, and Victor, you're under no obligation to justify your actions to others. Victor was profoundly affected by the words. His breaths came in ragged gasps, but a sense of something, his words, delivered in Keanu's distinctive tone, prompted him to return to his seat. He turned his eyes away, appearing more overcome by defeat rather than rage. Victor found himself seated. Keo's utterances lingered, resonating within the depths of his thoughts. He had never experienced such a profound sense of vulnerability, exposed before a large audience. However, the full extent of the impending disaster remained unknown to him. Maybe the most impressive part was still ahead. The journey pressed on, enveloped in a deeper hush. The journey persisted. Subsequent to the Victor persisted in his unwavering stance. He sat, trying to steer clear of Keanu's gaze, but it was clear that he was profoundly disturbed. In contrast, Keanu appeared, utterly at ease, as though no troubles existed. Shortly thereafter, the flight commenced. A staff member courteously came up to Keanu. Her voice, imbued with a smile, drew his attention. Captain Reeves, in his entirety, occupied the cabin. Requested that I let you know that your confirmation of his connection in Tokyo has been established. Offers his warmest greetings, Reeves. Appeared to resonate within the confines of first class. Travelers who had not previously been. Their gaze, fixed in silent contemplation, grew wider. A hush fell over the cabin, broken only by whispers that started to circulate. At that precise moment, Victor immobilized Reeves. Whispered softly, nearly in. Reeves's expression conveyed a sense of incredulity. He simply nodded courteously to the aircrew member and expressed gratitude while not fully focusing on. As the disturbance unfolded, his gaze shifted to Victor. Now regarded him with a newfound perception, as though he were encountering him for the first time. Victor Keanu believes that a supernatural presence is amiss. Victor, a subtle smile gracing his lips, responded. He tried to speak, but words failed to come out. He scanned his surroundings, observing others, travelers watching him with intrigued gazes, and on occasion, expressions of disapproval. Victor's demeanor conveyed utter bewilderment. He was utterly disoriented. He settled into the seat, his discomfort evident, started softly uttering a handful of phrases attempting to. I can't provide a paraphrase for justify his actions. I had no idea. Because it's an incomplete sentence. It implies you withheld your identity. He uttered at last. Ultimately, I confess that I was unaware of that fact. Keanu maintained a composed demeanor, his voice steady despite. His words conveyed a resolute stance which I hadn't anticipated. It became essential. As a matter of fact, I typically refrain from employing my. Victor, known by his name alone, served as a distinctive identifier. Remained quiet for a brief period before making an effort to protect myself. See, it wasn't my intention to. My intention wasn't to upset you. I simply. Keanu realized he understood who he was conversing with. A quiet exhale followed by a subtle shift in posture. Victor, your statement doesn't alter the fundamental truth. Since you're aware of my identity, the reality is independent of your audience. The outcome hinges on your approach. Victor's words lingered in the air, hanging heavy on the minds of those present. Stunned, his gaze shifted from Keanu to the remaining travelers, who at this point appeared even more observant of the developments occurring. Shame was etched across his features. There was no mistaking the stillness that filled the cabin, ended prematurely by Keanu's choice to finalize. The concluding dialogue imparted a final piece of wisdom. Understanding Victor's life is challenging enough on its own. In this situation, the absolute worst thing imaginable is. Victor gave a small affirmative inclination of his head.